Welcome, Neogenians, to Dawn of the New Earth. Today we're looking at the idea that this world is a corpse eater. What does that even mean? Is the earth devouring itself? Is this world a sort of self-consuming, cannibalistic creature? What does that even mean? What are we talking about? Well, we're taking a look at the banned Gospel of Phillip, and it discusses this. We're going to be unpacking it and seeing exactly what it means, but there's a lot that we're going to be taking a look at today, because not only are we going to be looking at this idea of the world being a corpse eater and seeing what that means, but we're also looking at the idea that Joseph built his own son's cross and that creation was a mistake, and a lot of other ideas as well as we explore this once banned gospel. And not only that, but of course, we're going to be looking at this through the lens of logic and reason and seeing what the hell does this have to do with us today, because we want to make sure that this is applicable to our lives and see what we can learn from this and see how it relates to us right here, right now, today, rather than just being a bunch of ancient stories. We want to see how it applies to our lives. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to jump right into it. But as always, my friends, hey, remember, hit like and subscribe. My channel is about raising consciousness, creating a new humanity and a new earth. And when you hit like and hit subscribe, it spreads this information around and it helps out a lot. So please take a minute to do that now. Not even a minute, it just takes a second. So take a second, half a second to do it. See how fast you can do it. Also, follow me on Spotify. If you look up Dawn of the New Earth on Spotify, you'll find my videos there. And it also helps to spread this information on that platform. I want to remind you that my new book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind, it's available right now. If you want to understand how to achieve a higher consciousness rationally, this is the way to do it. So it's available on Amazon, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. And my second book, Meta-Rationalism, The New Science of Mind, comes out in less than 2 weeks, July 11th, and it's available for pre-order right now. All right, my friends, let us begin. So we've been exploring the banned Gospel of Philip, and this particular section that we're going to deal with right now has a lot to do with like death and resurrection and all of these ideas that seem very dark, but we can understand that there's actually a light at the end of the tunnel. And so we're going to jump right into it. And as always with this stuff, like I always say, if it seems a little confusing at first, don't worry, because this stuff can seem a little confusing. It can seem hard to understand at first, but we're going to break it all down and see what it means, see what it's talking about. So let's just start. Oh, and as always, if you want to know where you can read all this stuff, you can read it for free on gnosis.org, gnosis.org. It's a great website, great resource. You can read all the Nag Hammadi scriptures, all the Gnostic not related scriptures related to the Nag Hammadi there on that website. So let's begin. See what's going on here. Those who say they will die first, then rise, are in error. So first of all, we're talking about resurrection. The idea that those who think that first they're going to die, then they rise, are wrong. And of course, this is a very common Christian belief. But this gospel is saying that's wrong. That's the wrong way to think about it. It continues by saying, if they do not receive the resurrection while they live, when they die, they will receive nothing. So unless you are resurrected, first, it's saying that you have to be resurrected while you're alive, or else when you die, you're not going to get anything. This is, of course, completely opposite of what is usually taught in the Christian church and the Christian beliefs. It continues, so also when speaking about baptism, they say baptism is a great thing because if people receive it, they will live. So let's break this down and talk about this. So like I said, there's a lot of talk about death in this particular section that we're reading here. And I want to remind you all, for those who don't know, I am an ex-Christian and I've devoted my life to uncovering and understanding truth. So I'm very familiar with the Christian teachings. And so what's going on here? So we're talking about resurrection. And obviously the common belief is that resurrection happens after we die. We live our lives, we pass away, and then resurrection occurs usually according to Christianity. We enter into the kingdom of heaven. We go to heaven. But that's actually what this is saying, is that that's backwards. It's saying unless you have the resurrection while you're alive, if you don't do that, then when you die, you're not going to get anything. because the resurrection is symbolic of transformation. So if you are waiting your whole life for something miraculous to happen after you die, only to realize that you were supposed to experience it while you're still here. So it's the idea here that this is being said is that resurrection represents a new understanding of your eternal nature or your eternal self. You don't have a true understanding of your true eternal nature unless you raise your consciousness. So that's what it means by, if you don't first receive the resurrection while you're alive, then when you die, you will receive nothing. Because the Gnostics believed in the cycle of reincarnation. So essentially you'll be incarnated again and again and again and again until you realize what you truly are. And that resurrection is the symbol of attaining a higher state of consciousness and knowledge of what you really are. You're becoming a new person. And there's this idea of like, you are, until you realize what you are dead. Because the Gnostics look at the material world as being related to death. They look at it as an evil place, a prison, a place of death. And so human beings are kind of like the walking dead until they realize that they're actually eternal spiritual beings, and then they are resurrected in the truth that they are eternal. So it continues here. Let's see. Oh, yeah. And then so it talks about baptism as well. And this is basically talking about how baptism isn't about some ritual sprinkling water on yourself. It's, again, symbolic for achieving a higher state of consciousness. All these ideas are symbolic of achieving a new state of consciousness. Baptism is like the initiation of that. So in this particular Gnostic belief, you had, this is a Valentinian Gnostic text. And so you had the baptism, the chrism, and then the bridal chamber. And these represented different stages. Baptism was like just the realization that you are an eternal being and getting started. And then the next step was actually going on that path in realizing the truth about what you are and unlocking that potential. And then the bridal chamber being symbolic for unifying all opposites within yourself, masculine and feminine, the divine and the material, all opposites being united as you become a whole being, as you understand the truth about what you really are and what existence is. And so this continues here. We're going to get to the section where it talks about the earth being a corpse eater in just a minute. But this continues by saying, and this is really interesting, it says, Philip the apostle said, because remember, this is the Gospel of Philip, Joseph the carpenter. So remember, Joseph is Jesus Christ's father. Now, you know, according to the Christian story, that's not his real daddy. His real daddy is, you know, the big daddy in the sky. But Joseph was his, you know, the wife of Mary. So it was his earthly father. And so Joseph was a carpenter. And it says Joseph the carpenter planted a garden because he needed wood for his trade. It was he who made the cross from the trees which he planted. His own offspring hung on that which he planted. His offspring was Jesus, and the planting was the cross. So this is a really interesting and strange as well. So it's talking about how Joseph was the one who planted the trees that would ultimately, and he who made the cross that Jesus would be hung on. So we have to realize that these gospels are not meant to be taken literally. So this isn't a literal story. It's a metaphor for how everything is interconnected. And especially when remember, there's a lot about death here. So the crucifixion is obviously death. It was Christ's end. His earthly end, you know, if you're going along with that story. And Joseph, being the father, represents the beginning. Now, he wasn't literally Christ's father, according to the story, but you can see how the father there is representative of a beginning. It's the begetting and the planting of seeds. And then you have growth through the trees growing. And then you have death, where it was ultimately, according to this, Joseph who created the cross that Jesus Christ would be hung on. Now, it's a very interesting story, but of course, this isn't literal. It's not actually what occurred, but it's basically talking about here destiny, a path that's laid out from the beginning and unfolding. And you have the process of begetting, the process of growth, and then death, but it's all linked together. It's all linked through the cause, the first cause of the Father. So the Gospel of Philip continues by saying, and this is very interesting, this world is a corpse eater. I think it was Jan in the chat who said that sounds like a black metal band. I agree. It does absolutely sound like a black metal band. And someone needs to have a band called Corpse Eater. There's a band called Cannibal Corpse, right? I don't know if they're black metal or not, but yeah, there's Cannibal Corpse. But yeah, we have Corpse Eater. This world is a corpse eater. What does that mean? It says all the things eaten in it themselves die also. This world is a corpse eater. All the things eaten in it themselves die also. So you have the world. Within the world, there are creatures that are eating and being eaten and dying. This world is a corpse eater. It's a self-devouring system. It's almost a cannibalistic system. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can understand this here. If you look at it, this earth is constantly consuming itself. Animals eat plants, and animals eat not only plants, but other animals. And plants draw nutrients from the soil, which is made up of decayed matter. And a lot of humans eat animals. I don't eat animals because I'm vegan, but a lot of humans do. And so you have this world, this material world, as this system that is constantly devouring itself. And this is kind of similar to the idea of, we talked about this a little bit last week, Arthur Schopenhauer, a philosopher who believed that we're stuck in a never-ending cycle of desire and consumption. And we're in this like endless loop of constant suffering. Now, it's not exactly like this, but we can understand that reality is this system of energy. And this system of energy is engaged in its own self-consumption. Everything is being eaten by everything else. So reality is constantly consuming itself. So if you want to look at it in a pretty dark way, you could almost think of God as being self-cannibalistic, because everything is God. We are God. We are all reality. We are all existence. And because we are all existence, everything that is consumed and everything that consumes is also being consumed, because everything is ultimately part of the same interconnected system. So you can see that God is kind of devouring itself. But this devouring of itself is an eternal process, because remember, energy can't be created or destroyed, only transformed. So all this energy is being transformed when plants draw nutrients from the soil and an animal eats the plants, and then humans eat plants and animals. Everything, this is energy that is constantly being transformed. Now, ethically speaking, I just want to be clear, I don't agree with human beings eating animals, but this is not an excuse for that. Just because reality is a system that consumes itself doesn't mean we need to have suffering within it. But you can see this consumption is not a finite consumption, it's an infinite consumption, where everything that is consumed is also being utilized to contribute to growth, or contribute to existence in general. So this can seem a little bleak, but if we can look at it from a much positive perspective, of course. But it's this idea of and we have to understand that the Gnostic interpretation of this is a little different, because the Gnostic interpretation, as we're going to see, is that the material world is evil. Okay, so let's continue, and I'll explain what this means a little bit. The world is a corpse eater. All things eaten in it themselves die also. So the earth is a system of death and consumption, consuming itself, eating itself away. Now it says, truth is a life eater. Very interesting. Truth is a life eater. Therefore, no one nourished by truth will die. It was from that place that Jesus came and brought food. To those who so desired, he gave life that they might not die. So what this is really talking about here is the idea that earth, the material world, is a corpse eater. It's a place of corpses. That's what it means. It is a place of corpses. Everything in it is eaten. Everything in it dies. But truth is a life eater. Now, that doesn't mean it's destroying life. That's not what it means here. It means that life, or that truth, is composed of life, essentially. That truth is what gives life. Truth is a life eater. When one understands truth, they are given life. That's essentially what it means. And so it says, therefore, no one nourished by truth will die. So it's basically saying, if you're nourished by matter, you're going to die. Everything that is consumed, everything that eats is also consumed. Everything eaten in it themselves die also. But if you eat from truth, you won't die. And what that essentially is saying is this common theme of, when you realize that you are more than matter, then you won't die. Because you'll realize that you are an eternal being and that you persist eternally. So that realization, that's what we talked about, the resurrection earlier, how you have to be resurrected while you are alive. Well, how do you become resurrected while you are alive? By consuming truth, by understanding the knowledge of what you are, where you are, and why you are here. That is how you step into your true life. And so it says that it was from that place Jesus came and brought food. So Jesus came from the place of truth and brought food for people to eat from the realm of truth, from the realm of life. And so for those who desired it, he gave life that they might not die. Now, we always have to remember that what Christ represents is higher consciousness. Christ represents the activation of higher consciousness. According to Gnosticism, Jesus Christ isn't a savior figure in that he's here to save us from our sins and to be worshipped as some godly being. Well, some Gnostics worshipped him as a godly being, but not as a godly being separate from them. It depends on the Gnostic sect, but what is common throughout all of Gnosticism is that we are what Jesus is. What Jesus is, we are. And the goal is to become what Jesus is. And Jesus was basically here to say, hey, everyone, wake up, realize what you are, realize that I'm the Son of God, and so are you. You are all sons of the living Father, like he said in the Gospel of Thomas. Now, of course, what this is representative of is that Christ represents the activation or the achievement of a higher consciousness. So when it says that Jesus Christ came from the realm of truth and life and brought food so that those who desired it would be given life that they may not die, means that those who achieve a higher consciousness and understand the truth about what they are will no longer be bound to this world that is a corpse eater, where all things eaten in it themselves die also. Rather, one eats from life. One eats from truth, and therefore no one nourished by truth will die. So the truth is, if we think about it, this is going a little bit beyond Gnosticism right now. But if we think about what reality is and what existence is, like I said earlier, this is a system of energy. It's a system of It's a system of energy and frequency patterns. And so this material world is just a specific expression of those energy patterns. And so everything that we are sort of consuming ourselves. When we eat plants and animals, we are consuming ourselves. But what we're trying to do is reduce unnecessary suffering in the world, because it's not an excuse. That's not, because if you look at the world, we're progressing. What we should be doing anyway is progressing so that we create a world with less suffering. You know, we want to reduce people killing each other. We want to reduce the unnecessary suffering of animals. We want to reduce as much suffering as possible, because ultimately we can get to a place where we are not causing any suffering to other minds. Now, this doesn't mean there won't be struggle and conflict. There's always going to be struggle and conflict. But we can get away from this corpse-eating world that we currently live in. We currently live in this corpse-eating world. And I mean, you can see this, you know, just, I have to tell you, being vegan for, I don't know how long I've been vegan now, maybe 5 or 6 years, but I've been vegan for a while. Seeing people eat animals, consuming corpses, is such a strange thing to me now. And you can imagine in the future, I guarantee you at some point in the future, if humanity doesn't destroy itself, at some point in the future, and they choose a path of higher consciousness and not a slave framework, that they at some point humans won't be eating animals. And it will be seen as something extremely barbaric and weird. I mean, just think about how odd and how strange that is. Imagine if, you know, someone had a pet cat and they unalived their pet cat and put it on the barbecue and ate it. You would think that was extremely strange and weird, right? I'm sure you would. You'd be like, oh, well, that's horrible. That's disgusting. Well, it's just because we're not used to it. It's just as disgusting to go out and, you know, kill a goat or a cow or anything else. It's just we've become so accustomed to it because of our culture, we don't look at it as being strange, but it really is. And there will be a time when that's going to be seen as utterly barbaric. Now, we're stuck in this world that, and that's just one example. There's a lot of horrible things going on in the world. There's a lot of atrocities. There's a lot of war and racism and hatred and sexism and homophobia and so many countless atrocities occurring every single day. So we live in a world that is just rife with unnecessary suffering, where it's a world of corpses, a world that is devouring itself. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can transform reality into a world where we're increasing the quality of life for everyone and reducing unnecessary suffering as time goes on. Now, like I said, there's always going to be struggle and conflict, but struggle and conflict doesn't have to be a bad thing. Struggle and conflict can be fun, like when you play a game. When you play a video game, it's fun because of the struggle and conflict. If you like football, you watch football players, it's fun because there's struggle and conflict. If I don't particularly like football, but for those who do like sports and that sort of thing, whether you're playing a game, a video game, or watching a sport, it's the conflict and the struggle that makes it fun and makes it interesting. And that includes the players involved. When you're playing a game, it can be a struggle, but it's fun. And this is the way to show that we can have a reality where struggle and conflict still occurs because we need that for growth, but where it's enjoyable. We can transform this world into a place that we actually look forward to localize in, because we have created the kingdom of heaven on earth. We've created this world where it's enjoyable to have these experiences. And that's, people think, oh man, that's such a utopian idea. It's really not. It should be bare minimum. It's kind of just the base state. But for a lot of people, it seems like a pie in the sky idea, but you have to remember that it's not. And you have to keep it firmly in mind that it's not, because if you believe that it can't happen, it never will, because things only happen because they begin as ideas in the mind. So this continues by saying the world came about through a mistake, for he who created it wanted to create it imperishable and immortal. He fell short of attaining his desire. So of course, according to Valentinian Gnosticism, the world was created out of a mistake. And depending on what version that you're reading, this mistake is built from basically a being, an eon known as Sophia, wanted to create something, and she accidentally created the material world, basically. Well, she didn't create the material world. She accidentally created the Demiurgus, Yaldabaoth, the evil being of shadow that then created the material world. So by extension, she was responsible for its creation. So her actions sort of caused reality. Reality prior to her actions was in total equilibrium. Everything was in harmony, and she kind of threw everything out of balance. And she did this by acting on her own volition rather than through the will of the divine mind and in accordance with her consort or partner. I'm not a huge fan of this particular story because, see, this is the part of Gnosticism that I don't particularly agree with. They look at the creation of the material world as being evil. I don't look at the creation of the material world. It seems like the material world is a horrible place because horrible people run it. But really, it's just a blank canvas and we can create whatever we want in it. Unfortunately, it's a really shitty world because shitty people run it. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can create a positive world by coming together and collectively manifesting it together. We can create that. And so the material world, you know, they look at the material world as a mistake and a prison, basically like a torture chamber. And in the beginning, it is that way. In the first phase, we go through survival, planetary civilization, and Holos independence. The first phase, survival, yeah, it's a pretty shitty phase. It's dog eat dog and, you know, just species killing species, evolution occurring to develop an avatar capable of hosting a self-aware consciousness. And then humanity evolves from that self-awareness and creates divisions, which leads to these divisions that incur because of self-awareness lead to seeing the other as a threat, which leads to sexism, racism, homophobia, nationalism, religious intolerance. And so you have all that division, all that separation, which is where all the suffering comes from. However, when we integrate and realize that we are all part of the same interconnected system, then we are no longer fragmented. And because we're no longer fragmented, we begin to form that unity again. And when we begin to form that unity, now we sort of start to have the best of both worlds where we're able to experience material reality and material existence, but we understand our divine nature. And so we can create better experiences here for ourselves. You see here, if we're in the material world and don't realize our divine nature, the world is a corpse eater. If we're in the material world and we do realize our divine nature collectively, then we build the kingdom of heaven on earth. Like Christ said, it's right in front of you. And so it's within you and all around you. And so we have to understand that the world is this horrific corpse eater when we don't know what we are. What it says is truth, but when you understand truth, no one will die. You will be given life. And so now, of course, they looked at the material world as being evil. However, we don't. We don't look at the material world as being evil. It's not evil. It's just a medium to create whatever we so will. It's our kingdom. And we have the power to create and transform. That's why we need to transform it from this corpse-eating planet into our kingdom, our citadel. So, for things are not imperishable, but sons are. Nothing will be able to receive imperishability if it does not first become a son. But he who has not the ability to receive, how much more will he be unable to give? So this is, again, talking about things that are imperishable and things that are perishable. Things that can be destroyed and things that can't be destroyed. And they're basically saying the material world is imperishable. It can be destroyed. That's why they call it like a corpse eater. It's a destructive place. It's a place of death. But it says, but sons, they are imperishable. And what does it mean by sons? Well, sons, they're talking about, this isn't a gendered thing. What is a son? Son is an extension of the father. So when it's saying a son is imperishable, it's basically meaning that when you realize that you are a son of the father, meaning when you realize that you are an emanation from the source, you realize your eternal nature. You see this common theme throughout of when you don't understand what you are, there is death. When you do understand what you are, there is life. You are activating that knowledge and understanding, which gives you the realization of what you are. And remember, all this gendered language like father and son is unfortunate. So, try and get past that. If that's kind of annoying to you, I understand. It's a little annoying to me as well, but that's how they talked back then. So, and here, just case in point, it continues by saying, not only will they be unable to detain the perfect man, but they will also not be able to see him, for if they see him, they will detain him. There is no other way for a person to acquire this quality except by putting on the perfect light, and he too becoming perfect light. Only Jesus knows the end of this person. So the perfect man is someone who understands what they are, that have activated their divine nature, understand their eternal essence. That's what they mean by the perfect man. Those who have gone through the bridal chamber, become whole, integrated all opposites within themselves. That's what they mean. And they're says that not only will they be unable to detain the perfect man, but they will not be able to see him. Basically, the archons, those evil beings of darkness, will not only will they not be able to detain the perfect man, meaning not only will they be trapped in the cycle of reincarnation, they won't even be able to see him. Because it says, because if they see him, they will detain him. So it's basically saying that if the archons can even see an individual, they're going to detain that individual, keep them trapped and keep them imprisoned. Remember, this is all metaphorical, of course. It's all an allegory, but it's saying that only Jesus knows the end of this person. Basically, only Jesus can see this person. Remember, Jesus is representative of the activation of higher consciousness. So Jesus can see this person because Jesus is at the state of higher consciousness with that, and that person is also at that state of higher consciousness. And the dark forces can't detain that being, and a person must, it says, put on the perfect light and become perfect light. So light is about knowledge. Light is about understanding, as contrasted to darkness. So the dark forces of the unconscious, those dark parts of ourselves that block us from attaining higher states of awareness, will not be able to drag us down and keep us imprisoned when we have the light of consciousness within ourselves. That's essentially what we can understand this to mean, is making the bringing darkness into light, making the unconscious conscious. Like Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So all those aspects of you that you are not aware of, that you have not brought into light, are going to control your life, are going to detain you, are going to constrain you, are going to limit you until you attain consciousness of what you are, put on the perfect light and become perfect light. And then the dark beings won't even be able to see you. Now this part is really interesting. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is cool. He who has knowledge of the truth is a free man, but the free man does not sin, for he who sins is the slave of sin. Truth is the mother, knowledge the father. Those who think that sinning does not apply to them are called free by the world. Knowledge of the truth merely makes such people ignorant, which is what the words "it makes them free" mean. So a couple things I want to talk about here. There's more to unpack with this, but there's some interesting things going on. First of all, it's talking about sin. We have to remember that sin in terms of Gnosticism is related to ignorance. But not only is it related to ignorance, they're going to talk about using knowledge in an incorrect way. So listen what it says. Knowledge of the truth merely makes such people arrogant, which is what the words "it makes them free" mean. It even gives them a sense of superiority over the whole world. This is important, and this is a key concept, because I talk about this a lot, how if people start to achieve a higher state of consciousness, but haven't done it properly. So in the Neogenian system, this is called developing a malformed analog all. The analog all is a structure in the psyche that develops that allows us to have a higher state of consciousness and reach all awareness. It's essentially an internal model of all reality. If that analog all is malformed, this can have negative consequences. Now, this has to do with people who have not achieved higher consciousness properly, which entails metacognition, phenomenological experience, and concept networking. Now, what this means is that certain people may begin to have knowledge and reach a certain level of consciousness, but what happens? They start to feel superior to others. They start to feel like they are masters over the world. And it's true, when we reach a high state of consciousness properly, we are masters over ourselves, and thus by extension, masters over the world. But these are the people who start to see themselves as masters over others. And this is where you get the shepherd and sheep mentality. Like, oh, humans are too dumb. I have such a great, I have attained such a high state of consciousness. I must lead the dumb sheep. And they can't understand this information. This is much too difficult for them to understand. And this is why I'm always critical of certain systems, not all systems, but there's systems in the occult, there's systems in esoterica, not all of them, but there are a lot of them that lead to this malformed state of higher consciousness where you start to get people who see themselves as masters of reality and leaders of the dumb, stupid people. Now, of course, they don't say that they're dumb and stupid, but that's essentially what the mentality has. So we have to remember that what we're trying to do here is create a better world by transforming ourselves and helping others reach a higher state of consciousness as well. You don't want to be worshipped as a master. You want to help your students so that they become at the same level as you and even higher. This is why in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus says that when you drink from his mouth, you will become him and he will become you. When you understand the words that he is saying, that is what drinking from his mouth means. When you understand the truth he's trying to impart and make it a part of you, you'll become him and he will become you. You will be one. And so essentially what this is warning against is people who have knowledge of the truth, but it just leads them to a feeling of superiority and being arrogant. And we want to avoid that. We want to be helping others, not lording our great knowledge and consciousness over other people. That's completely contrary to what we want to do and the kind of world we want to create. But we have to be very careful because there's a lot of esoteric systems. That's why I'm also critical of esoteric systems that rely on a ton of secrecy, because there's a lot of manipulation that can occur there. And it often attracts people with the wrong intentions. Instead of attracting people who legitimately want to explore themselves and help humanity, it attracts people who, they want to know the secret. They want secrets. They want power. It's usually associated with, secret knowledge so that I can have power. And again, this is not all the time, but often this occurs. And so then you have people who just want secret knowledge and power given access to higher consciousness, and then they use it in a very negative way. What we want to do is make it freely accessible to everyone. That's what the Neogenian system is all about. It's about taking these esoteric concepts, putting them on a rational foundation, and allowing anyone who wants to understand them to be able to have access to this information. So this is basically what it's saying. Knowledge of the truth merely makes such people arrogant. It even gives them a sense of superiority over the whole world. Now, but love builds up. In fact, he who is really free through knowledge is a slave because of love for those who have not been able to attain to the freedom of knowledge. Knowledge makes them capable of becoming free. Love never calls something its own. It never says this is yours or this is mine, but all these are yours. Spiritual love is wine and fragrance. So what this is talking about is essentially that you have to have love with knowledge. Because if you don't have love with knowledge, it can lead to arrogance and superiority. But if you have love with knowledge, what does it say? It says, love never calls something its own. It doesn't say, this is mine and that's yours. But all of these things are yours. And I would say it's mine as well. Sometimes you get too much. We have to be balanced. We have to remember that, some people are like, oh, it's all about others, others, others. Yes, it is all about others, but it's also about the self as well, because the more you build up yourself, the more that you're capable of helping others. So we have to remember that we live in a collective, we live in a community, which entails both self and other. And we want to service both self and other as long as we're doing it in a harmonized way, never the case where we are hurting others to augment the self. We never want to do that. We want to augment the collective, and we can often augment the collective by augmenting ourselves because it gives us the better capacity to help others. So as long as we're doing it in that way. But this idea that love doesn't say this is yours, this is mine, but all these are yours. And this is essentially the idea of going from self-awareness to all awareness, because self-awareness is all about division. Oh, I am me. I am not you. These are my things. Those are your things. This is my religion. This is my country. These are my jobs. You're the enemy. Those are your things. Or you see what I mean? It's very divisive. But when you achieve all awareness, you realize that, yes, we are individuals, but we're all in a singular interconnected system. So all this is ours. We're all sharing this together. This is our world, our planet, our reality, our existence. And so the idea that this idea of knowledge with love means having an understanding of what one is, but not just in a intellectual way, but in a proper way where one realizes and has a love for the interconnectedness of all reality. And so this is why in our system we have to achieve hyper-awareness, which is an advanced stage of all awareness. There's metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. If you leave out phenomenological experience and only have metacognition and concept networking, that's where you can get into this idea of superiority and arrogance that they're talking about here, because you have only an intellectual understanding of it. And that's crucial. That's critical. There's a lot of people who don't have an intellectual understanding of it, but if you only have an intellectual understanding of it, you can get to a place where you are very disconnected for the reality of what it is like to actually be the divine essence of existence. So metacognition, concept networking are important, but it's about intellectualizing. The third aspect, phenomenological experience, is about immersing yourself in the what it is like to be existence. Now, this can be through altered states of consciousness, and exactly how this is done depends on, I don't want to get into right now, but it can be through meditative states, psychedelic experiences, thought experiments where you are immersing yourself into certain aspects of reality, rituals. But remember, every time I say psychedelics, I want to remind you that these things aren't necessary. Don't do anything dangerous or illegal. That's just one thing for some people that is helpful. But it's about understanding what it is like to be reality, unlocking your intuition, having intuitive experiences. And you need all these together to have a properly formed analog all, where not only do you have knowledge of existence, but you have that true understanding of what it is like to be existence. And that's why you realize, oh, wow, I shouldn't treat people like shit, because if I treat others like shit, I'm really treating myself like shit, because we're all interconnected. And so we want to have metacognition, concept networking, and phenomenological experience. Now, these are all important. Now, one issue is that, let's say, like in New Age spirituality is almost all phenomenological experience and hardly any concept networking or metacognition. The concept networking is usually replaced by apophenia, which is making connections that aren't really there. And there isn't very much of an intellectual understanding. So that's the problem you get if you basically, that's like having all love but no knowledge. You get New Age systems. All love but no knowledge are sort of like New Age spirituality, where they have this intuitive understanding of being existence, but they don't really understand how things connect or how reality works in a true, well-defined way. Whereas if you have just the other two aspects without the phenomenological experience, then you can be so intellectualized it so much that you forget, or not even forget, but you don't know what it is like to be existence, and so you start treating other people in a shitty way. Anyway, so I thought this was really cool. This idea of needing knowledge and love, meaning an understanding of existence and empathy and care, and not only empathy and care, but to such a degree where you realize that we're all reflections of each other. That's why it never says this is yours or this is mine, but all these are yours. Everything is ours, really. So, I would change yours to ours. Now it says, ignorance is the mother of all evil. So now it's talking about how, like, the real sin, what is really evil, all sin, all evil. What is all sin and what is all evil? Where does that come from? Ignorance. Ignorance is the mother of all evil. Basically, stupidity. Not knowing things, not knowing what you are. That is the mother of all evil. Ignorance will result in death, because those who come from ignorance neither were, nor are, nor shall be. For truth is like ignorance. While it is hidden, it rests in itself. But when it is revealed and recognized, it is praised, inasmuch as it is stronger than ignorance and error. It gives freedom. The word said, if you know the truth will make you free. Ignorance is a slave. Knowledge is freedom. If we know the truth, we shall find the fruits of the truth within us. If we are joined to it, it will bring our fulfillment. So really cool stuff, basically saying all evil is ignorance, and knowledge is truth and freedom. But as we saw in the previous verses, we want to make sure that we have love as well, in addition to knowledge. So ignorance is the ultimate enemy. Knowledge is what sets us free. And love is what allows us to create a harmonious community. Let's see. I want to read one more thing here. This is kind of a weird little metaphor, but let's talk about it. No one can know when the husband and the wife have intercourse with one another. No one can know when the husband and the wife have intercourse with one another, except the two of them. So unless you're having an orgy, or you have a OF account with your partner, you know, basically what this is saying is when two people have intercourse, they're alone. They're with each other. Other people don't know that they're doing it. Indeed, marriage in the world is a mystery for those who have taken a wife. If there is a hidden quality to the marriage of defilement, how much more is the undefiled marriage a true mystery? So again, you can see Gnostics are not a fan really of intercourse in general or marriage, because they call it the marriage of defilement. Basically, you know, actual human marriage, people marrying each other and having intercourse, they call it a marriage of defilement. But they're saying that even in this marriage of defilement, there's a mystery. There's something hidden in it. And they're using the metaphor of it being when they have intercourse. So they're saying even in physical marriage, which they see as the marriage of defilement, there's a mystery. But anyway, it goes on to say, but how much more is the undefiled marriage a true mystery? It is not fleshly, but pure. It belongs not to desire, but to the will. So this is talking about the spiritual marriage, which we discussed in so many aspects in the Gospel of Philip, which is representative of the bridal chamber and also representative of Jesus Christ kissing Mary and Mary being his partner. This all represents the spiritual marriage of opposites, all opposites coming together, often metaphorically presented as the union of masculine and feminine. But it doesn't have to be masculine and feminine. It's the masculine and the feminine. Christ says the in like the with the in with the without, the above with the below, the male with the female, etc., etc. So it's just about opposing forces coming together to form a whole, to form a unity. That's the true spiritual marriage, is what they're saying. And they're saying that, you know, oh, there's a mystery in physical marriage, which is when they have intercourse. And there is a mystery. How much more is that mystery, that hidden quality in spiritual marriage, which is not fleshly, but pure, is not about desire, but will, and belongs not to the darkness or the night, but to the day and the light. So if a marriage is open to the public, it has become prostitution. And the bride plays the harlot, not only when she is impregnated by another man, but even if she slips out of her bedroom and is seen. Let her show herself only to her father and her mother, and to the friend of the bridegroom and the sons of the bridegroom. These are permitted to enter every day into the bridal chamber, but let the others yearn just to listen to her voice and to enjoy her ointment, and let them feed from the crumbs that fall from the table like the dogs. Wow, it's pretty intense verse. Bridegrooms and brides belong to the bridal chamber. No one shall be able to see the bridegroom with the bride unless he becomes such a one. Okay, so there's a lot of, it's a very weird verse, and a lot of it's outdated and using allegories that are not very sex positive, because remember, they hated sex and were, you know, thought that that was just about being bound to the material world. So there's a lot of negativity being put here. But basically what this is saying, what the idea that they're trying to get across is that there is a secret within the bridal chamber, that bridegrooms and brides belong to the bridal chamber. They're not out there having intercourse on the street where everyone can see. And basically what this means is, it says, no one shall be able to see the bridegroom with the bride unless he becomes such a one. So meaning that, you know, likewise, when those who are married have intercourse, they're not doing it out in public where everyone can see them. They're doing it in a private place. It's essentially saying that those who are spiritually whole, spiritually married within themselves, those who have attained spiritual enlightenment, that is not something that that contains a mystery as well, where the mystery of the physical analogy is, when are they having intercourse? People aren't, you know, watching them. This is basically saying that no one will be able to see the enlightened person, the spiritual person, unless that person becomes spiritually enlightened themselves. And it's kind of getting to the idea of, you know, you've probably had this experience before, where if you're talking about ideas that are above most people's heads and that don't really think about these types of things, they'll just look at you like you're crazy. They have no idea what you're talking about, and they think you're a weirdo. But when you talk about it with other people who do think about these things, then you two get along very well and discuss these ideas and have a conversation and are able to see each other. That's what basically it means, that others can't see you unless they're on the same wavelength as you. Then they can see you. This is the idea of no one shall be able to see the bridegroom and the bride unless he becomes such a one. They just use a very strange metaphor to get that across. And so what we can understand here, to me, all of this is really about understanding that this world is currently in a terrible state. It's a corpse eater. And what we need to do is come to a true understanding of what we are by realizing that ignorance is the enemy. Ignorance is the mother of all evil. And what sets us free is knowledge, and what unites us is love. Now, how much better would Christianity be if these were the teachings they followed? Now, of course, the whole negative aspect of intercourse, that's too bad. You know, like I said, there's some stuff in here that I don't agree with. I don't agree with looking at the material world as evil. I don't agree with looking at intercourse as a bad thing. I don't agree with those things. But a lot of this is vastly superior to Christian teachings that teach you that you are a broken, flawed, sinful nothingness that has to submit to a deity, or you'll be thrown into a lake of fire for eternity. Whereas here they teach, what is sin? What is the true evil? Ignorance. What sets you free? Knowledge. What brings us together? Love. Even just those three concepts, really, in a nutshell, really encapsulates everything in a nutshell really well. Those are really three main important ideas. Realizing that what's the real enemy? The real enemy isn't, a different race or a different gender or a different nationality or a different culture. It's not those aren't the enemies. The enemy is ignorance. What gives us freedom? Knowledge. What brings us together? Love. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's awesome. And I love those ideas a lot. And it's, firmly rooted in our ideas as well. Seeing ignorance as being evil, knowing that we need to come to a rational understanding of what we are, where we are, and why we are here, and creating a world of love, using our knowledge and understanding to maximize the quality of life for everyone. All right, my friends, I hope that you enjoyed that. I have a lot of videos on this topic. I have a whole playlist on the Gospel of Phillip. Go check it out. If you enjoy my work, consider becoming a member right here on YouTube or on Patreon. I really appreciate it. It's the best way to support my work. And you get access to it. Check out all the perks you get. There's a lot of different things depending on what tier you select. You get access to all of our members only videos. There's a ton of them. There's a new one every single week. You get access to our private Discord server, The Citadel, where every Sunday we have live Neogenian classes and study sessions presented by Neogenian presenters in the Nexus Academy. It's really great. And so, yeah, check that out. Just hit the join button right below this video on YouTube, or go to patreon.com/MorgueOfficial. Also, a reminder, my new book is out right now, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. Go check it out. It's available on Amazon. Link is in the description of this video. And my second book comes out in less than 2 weeks on July 11th. Finally, follow me on Spotify, Dawn of the New Earth. There's a lot of things, isn't there? Lots of things. But thank you so much, my friends. I appreciate it. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Christopher, Eon, David, Fashida, and everyone else. Thank you very much.